A lot of our clients are already quite values aligned, so they understand what B Corp represents. And for them, it just adds another level of confidence that we're walking the talk ourselves.
Hello and welcome to The Greener Way. I'm Jamie Williamson, Managing Editor of Financial Standard and FS Sustainability. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the B Corp certification process. There's currently close to 11,000 companies across 105 countries and 163 industries that have achieved B Corp status, and one of them is Unless Financial. Unless Financial is a provider of ethical financial advice established about 18 months ago. And today I'm joined by one of its co-founders and head of sustainability, Marissa Theodorou, to talk us through the group's recent experience in getting certified as a B Corp. Marissa, welcome to The Greener Way.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for having me.
Marissa, you led this process towards the B Corp certification. Can you walk us through what that verification process looks like? I know that this was something that you and the other founders of Unless had planned to do from the outset of establishing the business. So how much preparation had to be done ahead of the process, and how long did the process take all up?
The B Corp verification process starts with what's called a B Impact Assessment, or BIA, which is a confidential online tool used to evaluate a company's holistic performance across 5 key areas. It's essentially a detailed set of questions that you complete internally, and the key is that you have to back everything up with evidence.
Yeah.
So that could be things like your employee handbook, your investment process, your code of ethics, even job descriptions and internal policies. Once you submit it, it goes into review with B Lab. They check eligibility, look for any controversial issues, and make sure you're broadly on the right track. After that, you're assigned a verification analyst who goes through everything in detail, and that part is quite interactive. They'll come back with questions, ask for clarification, request more evidence, and sometimes challenge your answers. For most companies, that stage can take a few months. We opted to go through their accelerated verification process. So I worked quite closely with our analysts in a much shorter, more focused window. And for us, that part took just a few weeks. But in terms of overall timing, from launching Unless to certification, it took about 1.5 years. But most of the real work, I would say, happened in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Once we were a bit more established and could properly embed things into how we operate day to day.
Obviously, there are a lot of advisors or advice groups out there that do already do work in the kind of ESG space. They're talking about responsible investing with their clients day to day. But for those advisors who do already do all of that, how much value does being B Corp certified actually add? And what does it mean in practice for an advice business to be B Corp certified?
For us, the biggest value is that it forced us to apply the same lens we use when assessing investments for clients to our own business. So not just what we recommend, but how we operate, how we treat people, who we partner with, and ultimately how decisions are getting made. And in practice, in an advice business, that shows up in 3 main ways. The first is how we construct portfolios. We've built a really rigorous investment process. So anything that goes into our approved product list has to meet both strong financial quality and credible, responsible investment criteria. We're looking at criteria such as climate transition alignment, real world impact those investments are generating, and whether fund managers are actually engaging with companies in a meaningful way. We also make sure we rely on independent research, which adds another layer of objectivity to the process. And we collaborate closely with groups like Ethical Advisors Co-op and RIA, which helps us stay connected to best practice and continues to raise the bar in how we approach responsible investing. Our advisors are also certified responsible investment advisors, each with around 20 plus years of experience in ethical and impact focused advice. The second is how we run our business internally. That's particularly around how we support our team and build our culture. For example, we've partnered with an employee assistance program which gives our team access to online and confidential coaching, mental health support, and financial wellbeing resources. We wanted to make sure that we're reflecting a deep care and respect for our team internally if we're advising on clients' long-term financial wellbeing. We also formalized things like paid volunteer days and a broader sustainability and philanthropy approach, including how we reduce our carbon footprint to where we give back to our community. And the third is how we create ripple effects beyond ourselves. That shows up through education and community engagement. So partnering with organizations like Asian Australians for Climate Solutions to co-design a program that helps people better understand how to align their money with their values. It's also working with groups like Six Invest on shareholder advocacy and contributing more broadly to the impact conversation, whether that's through panels, podcasts like this, industry events, webinars, or being involved in climate action, like hosting a meetup during Climate Action Week just recently in Sydney. And a big part of it for us really is just trying to bring awareness to impact investing. So we share regular insights through our newsletter, Ripple Effects. We're also really active on our LinkedIn and other social accounts like Instagram and Facebook.
And how have clients responded? How have they perceived the B Corp certification and prospective clients as well? Has it helped in terms of winning new business at all or anything like that?
Yeah, clients have responded really, really positively. A lot of our clients are already quite values aligned, so they understand what B Corp represents. And for them, it just adds another level of confidence that we're walking the talk ourselves. What's been interesting is how it shows up in subtle, smaller ways as well. So even before we officially announced it, just a few days after we got certified, we had someone find us through the B Corp directory. They were searching for ethical financial advice in Australia, came across us and reached out directly. So it's not necessarily that people are coming in asking for B Corp specifically, but when they see the logo or understand what it means, it builds confidence in our ethics and shows that there's been an independent level of scrutiny behind what we do. And for the right prospective clients, it creates a sense of alignment really early on that they're working with a financial advice firm that takes both their financial goals and the impact of their capital really seriously.
And now with the benefit of hindsight, what would you say was kind of the hardest part of the process? You said that you did the accelerated kind of version of it, which was several weeks still. But what was kind of the biggest challenge you faced?
The biggest challenge was probably the shift from intention to evidence and providing that evidence. We were already doing a lot of the right things, but B Corp needs you to prove it. So it became about formalizing everything, turning our values, our mission into policies. And then from there, the policies into something we can actually measure and track and be held accountable to. And that's where the real work is. It's not in having good intentions. It's embedding them into how the business actually operates every single day.
I guess that's kind of the internal side of things, right? But did becoming a B Corp or has becoming a B Corp changed anything externally for the business?
Yeah, it did. Absolutely. What it's done is it's helped build an initial layer of trust a bit quicker with prospective clients and with partners. In financial advice in this industry, earning trust and credibility still takes more time than that and more effort than just the B Corp badge of honor. But once someone sees that we're a B Corp, it gives them a signal early on that we've been independently assessed and held to a higher standard, and that we ultimately prioritize people and planet, not just profit. It's also helped when it comes to partnerships. We've found it's a bit easier to connect with like-minded organizations and to build out our ecosystem more intentionally. And I think on our side, it's given us a lot of clarity as well. We're really clear on what we stand for. which makes it easier to stay aligned with the right people and the right opportunities.
I do want to acknowledge that there has been some criticism of the B Corp process in the past.
Yeah.
There have been some that have said that the bar is kind of too low in terms of the criteria that needs to be met, or that there are some organizations, particularly, I guess, some of the bigger multinationals that may not necessarily be perceived as being the most ethical companies, that sort of use it as a means of greenwashing, or it's just good for their marketing. Having gone through the process yourself now, what's your view on that?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I too was really interested in the process because I've always looked up to B Corps, and I do think some of the criticism was fair at the time. That is because under the first version of standards, which is the version that I went through, it was a points-based system across 5 impact areas. And that was governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. And you only needed 80 out of 200 points in total to pass and get certified. So that meant that in some companies, you could perform really well in one area, but weak in another and still get certified. So yeah, that level of flexibility meant the bar wasn't always consistent across the board. But I think what's really encouraging is that B Lab has responded to that feedback, and they've since come out with new standards that have really raised the bar, which is exactly what someone like me wants to see, because frameworks like this only work if they continue to evolve and continue to get stronger over time.
And you mentioned that you went through the first version, or you're certified under the first version.
Yep.
The second version was just launched in the last month or so. When you guys need to recertify, which I think is every 3 years, is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll be doing that under the second version. What will differ, and how will you need to prepare differently for that?
Yes, yeah, that's definitely right. We will be under the second version, and there is quite a difference. I'll point out 3 of the biggest changes. So the first is the structure. They've moved from 5 impact areas, 5 quite broad impact areas, to 7 more defined impact areas. This includes climate action, human rights, fair work, circularity, and diversity and inclusion. So it's much more comprehensive and clearly articulated. The second is that there are now minimum requirements within each of those areas. So you can no longer be strong in one area and weak in another. You have to be performing incredibly holistically. And the third is that it's moving away from a single point in time score. Instead, there's a much stronger focus on ongoing progress. So you need to demonstrate how you're improving every time you recertify, which will be us in 3 years.
Just finally, I do want to ask, what advice would you give to other financial advice firms that are considering taking this journey to becoming a B Corp? Are there any kind of tips and traps that you encountered or that you can offer them?
A few things come to mind. I would encourage other financial advice firms to start earlier than they think. You don't need to have everything figured out. The assessment itself is really useful because it shows you where the gaps are. I'd also say focus on progress, not perfection. There is a lot to go through, but if you pick a few areas where you can make meaningful improvements and build from there, it then becomes a much more manageable process to complete. And in terms of traps, it's probably underestimating the amount of time and detail involved, especially around providing the evidence, like I mentioned earlier. And the biggest tip would be to not treat it as a marketing exercise. If the goal is just to get certified, you'll miss most of the value. The real benefit is how it changes your business operations day to day. And if you approach it in that way, the certification then becomes a product of building a truly better, responsible, more impactful business.
Yeah, it sounds like your message is kind of that it's not exactly quick or easy, but it is definitely meaningful.
Correct.
Yeah.
It takes time, but it's worth it for sure.
Well, thank you so much. That is a wrap for our episode today, Marissa, but thank you so much for joining us on The Greener Way and talking us through the process and sharing your insights with our listeners.
Thank you for having me.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement, and if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com.au.